Auston Matthews nets a pair of goals as the Maple Leafs bounce back on the road in Florida. Welcome into Rinkwide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, free casino games and sports odds. It is time to play at Bodog.net's Rob Wong, joined alongside by David Alter, comes to us from sunny Florida. Well, I guess it's not sunny anymore because it is nighttime following this game between the Maple Leafs and the Florida Panthers as Toronto comes away victorious 6-2. And you think back to the other game, Dave, against the Islanders, there was a lot of talk about how desperate the Islanders were and, the Maple Leafs, maybe their inability to deal with a team that's fighting for a playoff spot. Well, they got redemption here with an opportunity against the Panthers, another team fighting to make the playoffs. And at the end of the night, you look at the stats, you look at the numbers, and this is about as good of an effort as you could have asked for against a team that's pretty dangerous offensively.
Yeah, really good game. I mean, even in the early going when they were giving up a lot of shots, it wasn't that many. I think the Leafs did a good job of getting the better quality of them in that first period. And anytime they were tested, I thought Matt Murray looked fantastic. There was that second goal that was kind of the skate across the net and then backhand, but just kind of not getting the read right on that one. But that's kind of hard because he's going across. But outside of that, I thought he was stellar. It really looks like he's in a bit of a groove now. And that's good with the Ilya Samsonov not with the team right now as he just became a dad today. So congrats to him. And his family, of course. But yeah, Leafs pretty good in this one. Pushing the pace of play, the Stars getting goals, and just getting to the net. That was the big thing that they weren't doing in that game against the Islanders. And even before that, well, they did it a little bit against the Islanders, but not enough. And before that, they just weren't kind of going into the interior at all. This time they made sure to go more into that home plate area that everyone likes to track for high danger. And they were rewarded for it. And some really good chances, and William Nylander busts out of a little bit of a drought, even though he had an okay game the last one. So all around, pretty good result. But more importantly, as you mentioned off the top, this is a desperate team. These are the ones that they're kind of being measured on, and the Leafs are trying to manufacture their own desperation when there's really not that much to play for. And they showed proper pushback, but they also needed a game like this. Just following what happened, that was their most lopsided loss of the season. It was really important that they came at with some sort of response, and they did that tonight.
Yeah, that's really the big thing here, that they got the win and a big swing game as well as they got some help on the out-of-town scoreboard. The Ottawa Senators, the only time you'll ever see Leafs Nation cheer for the Ottawa Senators, a big 7-2 win for the Sens over the Lightning. So the Leafs are now 5 points clear of the Tampa Bay Lightning with 2 games in hand. So that's a
insane.
massive
That
is a massive win tonight.
What is happening with the Lightning right now?
I have no idea.
I mean, if the Lightning and the Leafs had different fan bases, there'd be a ton of panic going on right now in Tampa, if there isn't already. I mean, look, there's losses and teams kind of go through these swings, but it looks like ever since the trade deadline, they've really just gone south, no pun intended. It's been really strange to see. They didn't remake their roster too much. They added a couple of guys that everyone felt were a good fit. It's really strange to just kind of see where this is going. And you wonder when you go through 3 consecutive years of playing all 4 playoff rounds, if that's starting to take its toll at the worst possible time. You want to be heating up, not going down. And so for everything Toronto's kind of have with the issues and the newcomers, it's looking not so great in Tampa either.
Yeah, I'm not sure it's ever going to make Maple Leafs fans feel any better until they actually see the team win a first-round matchup. But if there was ever a time you would want to play the Tampa Bay Lightning, maybe this is the year where, as you said, they've played a ton of hockey. They're not looking particularly good. I'm not saying it would be an easy matchup by any means. I mean, they're still a really good team. They're 5 points back of the Maple Leafs, even though Toronto has 2 games in hand. They're still a really, really good hockey team, and they, can seemingly still flip the switch when they have to. But right now, it is not great times with regards to the Tampa Bay Lightning. But the Leafs feeling good after this win, and Auston Matthews has to be feeling really good right now about his game, Dave. A pair of goals in this one. Calle Jarnkrok really fitting on that top line as well. Had a nice screen in front of Sergei Bobrovsky on the first Matthews goal, and Matthews said post-game that it's been nice to play with Jarnkrok on that line.
Yeah, I mean, it was just a great screen, honestly. It was a bit of a muffin that I threw at the net, but, the goalie didn't see it and was able to just, pick a spot and get it there. But it was just an unbelievable screen by him. And, I mean, those are just the little things that he does night in, night out that, maybe sometimes go unnoticed, but just such a smart player. And like I said before, just a very easy guy to play with.
And, it's interesting, and we'll get to Auston Matthews in a second here with regards to his game. But when it comes to Jarnkrok, I mean, we've talked a lot about it, I would say, the last couple of post games here with, how well he's fit on that line and how well he's fit in the top six. And I was always under the impression that Michael Bunting would work his way back to that line with Auston Matthews and Mitch Marner, and maybe he does. I mean, wouldn't necessarily say this, Jarnkrok, Matthews, and Marner pairing trio, I should say, is, set in stone. But with the way things have gone right now, I think it would take quite a fall from Jarnkrok for Sheldon Keefe to go back to Michael Bunting there right now.
Yeah, and in some of his post-game comments, I don't think that's going to be happening anytime soon with the switch, just because the one thing that he pointed out to Jarnkrok and what's allowed him to kind of stay there in the last few games now is the fact that if you're going to play with elite players on that top line, it's not just about the fact that you can get to the net and get the puck to your stars that are going to produce points. That's all well and good and important for sure. But it's being able to handle the matchups that line gets and being really strong defensively as well, which is part of the recipe, part of the all-around package that you get from Jarnkrok, which is what has allowed to propel him into this spot and stay there. And why you heard from Sheldon Keefe a few days ago saying that when line changes and combinations were being made, that Matthews was adamant that Jarnkrok staying on that line, even when they moved Marner down in that little demotion that they had with Nylander to try to figure stuff out. Matthews was like, well, you got to keep Jarnkrok in there, even if that means whatever the case may be. In that case, it was putting Alex Kerfoot as the other winger in that spot. So you're seeing it. There's just, it's kind of one of these things where, and we mentioned it, that Calle Jarnkrok has just become this top six winger that I don't think everyone expected when he was playing in that role with Bunting and, not with Bunting, with Tavares and Marner on the second line much of the year. Most people had this foregone conclusion that, well, Jarnkrok is just like a spot filler until they upgrade the top six, right? Like that was the narrative, and that's not the case anymore. They've got other guys. Ryan O'Reilly's going to come back and move some things around, but they even tried him on the third line as a center there. And that looks like where he might just be best suited and slotted in that particular case. So, really, really interesting to kind of see how this kind of goes down and plays itself out. And Calle Jarnkrok right now has found this mix. And look, if your star player wants him around, your star player is going to get it. And that's exactly what's happening with Calle Jarnkrok. And that's why he's been alongside Auston Matthews for the past 5 games.
Yeah, it's worked out really well, that trio with those 3 guys and that duo specifically with Matthews and Jarnkrok. But with regards to Matthews tonight, just another example of him seemingly finding that game that has eluded him at times this year. But, this recent stretch, really since that New Jersey Devils game and maybe even, before that, the Vancouver game where he took the shot off the knee. And since that point, he's really elevated his game. And tonight, a couple of goals, doing Auston Matthews things, getting up in the rush, working the puck down low, using his size. I'm kind of at the point now again where I just don't have any concerns with Auston Matthews. Like, he's doing everything you could ask him to do at this point, Dave. And, I think, expect a high level every single night. And the bar is set so high for Auston Matthews that sometimes it's pretty, tough to reach. But you see a game like this and it just gives you a lot of hope and a lot of optimism that he's finding his game at the right time.
Yeah, he certainly has found the groove. And I think it was ever since like the day before he revealed that he was kind of on the mend from this hand injury. I remember looking at that game I don't usually tweet a lot about just passive observations that I'm seeing as notes, but like from the early going of that game, I want to say it might have been Seattle. It was fairly recent, where you just kind of felt like he's feeling like he kind of had this way about him on the ice that looked familiar, not like it had in games previous to that. And so as he's gotten better, he's got that swagger back. Like this is now 4 straight games with points. That has not happened in a little while, not since January, so that's a pretty significant thing, but he's just looking dominant out there, right? Like he's looking like he's not just the decoy, he's the star. That's what everyone expected of the reigning MVP. And at times when it wasn't happening this year, you kind of figured what was up, and is it serious? Is it long term? And then there was the cloud of mystery of what the injury was before it was finally revealed that it was a hand injury. And I think that the fact that it was revealed gave a sense of calm, because at this point, he was comfortable enough to go with it by saying that, feeling like, yeah, he actually is, back and everything is kind of going. So a 2-goal game for him, first time since that game in Seattle where he was quote unquote feeling it before. And, it looks like this is the Auston Matthews that the Leafs need at the exact right period of time, because this is where you need to start ramping up your game going into the postseason. And they need their core 4 guys to be game breakers if they're going to have success in the playoffs.
Well, if Auston Matthews wasn't the first star of this game, it might be Matt Murray, who's now put back-to-back solid efforts. And, the game the other night against Ottawa, obviously the final stat line didn't look great. Another 4 goals allowed for Murray, but we know with the 48 saves and the saves he made in the shootout, I mean, he was phenomenal in that one, and the Leafs don't win it without him. Some of the goals, not his fault, weird bounces that just didn't go his way tonight. He was great. And, of course, there was that unreal save that he made on Matthew Tkachuk on the penalty kill. It looked initially like it was the save of the year, one of the best saves we've seen from a goaltender this season, but they did go review it, and yeah, it did sneak over the line. You could see it in the mesh. It's funny, like thinking, if the puck was at that point, but maybe it wasn't part of the mesh, they must have had to zoom on it really closely to see the white of the ice. I mean, it was a goal. You could just see it on the broadcast, but I mean, it was like millimeters away from not being a goal and being an incredible save by the Maple Leafs goalie. But let's hear from Matt Murray, who spoke about that save post-game.
Those ones just a little disappointing, knowing that it was such a ridiculous save.
Yeah, that would have been... maybe the save of my career right there, off the first one off my back, and then the second one with the glove. But I guess it was clear. I didn't think it was so clear, but I'm probably pretty biased. But,
did you get a chance to look at it?
Not just on the jumbotron, not much after that. But if they were that sure, they came back pretty quick. So obviously it was across the line.
Yeah, it was an incredible attempt, one that in the end didn't really matter because the Leafs win this one by 4 goals. But sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, even before that, and it just crossed my mind, I should have asked him about it after the game, but remember, he made this crazy save when there was a goalie interference before that. There was goalie interference called, and it looked like the puck had went in, people reacted to it, but when they whistled it dead for goalie interference, he actually got his glove on that one, where most of his body was inside the net, yet his glove was on the line, and he managed to stop that one. And that was before the craziness of the play we're just talking about, that I'm thinking to myself, wow, he was really dialed in. Like the fact that he was just kind of able to just track the puck to this way, where even when he was knocked off kilter, he kind of knew exactly where to go at a particular moment in time and stop what was happening in that particular moment. So just a really dialed in performance from him today.
Yeah, and it's been a nice little run here for him. We know when he first came back and he was having those struggles, Sheldon Keefe was saying that, he thought Matt Murray was really good despite the numbers, and everyone was sort of laughing it off, being like, really? Like, you think Matt Murray's been playing well? But, Sheldon Keefe, whether it was he was just trying to keep Murray's spirits up, or he actually did believe that. Well, it's paid off here now with a couple of really good starts. And, it just seems every week, Dave, we go back and forth, Samsonov, Murray, Samsonov. And I think, Leafs Nation kind of feel the same way, where they watch a performance like the one against the Senators, or they see this one tonight by Matt Murray, and you go, wow, like maybe Matt Murray can be that guy to start game one of the playoffs. And then you see a great game by Ilya Samsonov, and you go, oh, maybe it's Samsonov this time. Like, we predicted at the beginning of the year that it would most likely be this way, where it would go back and forth. I know, you've talked a lot about how Samsonov, you always thought, would be the one that would sort of win this goalie battle and come out on top. But it's really been a conversation we've been having basically since the start of the season, and really even preseason, with regards to both of these guys, because it's played out maybe not exactly as we expected, because they both got injured at one point and weren't playing, and you had Eric Källgren and Joseph Wall going. So it's been just quite a circuitous route to get to where we are now, where you've got two goalies that you don't have 100% confidence in, but on any given night, that confidence can be pretty high at times.
Yeah, well, it's just going to come down to feel, right? Like, that's really what it's going to come down to. No matter what happens toward the end of the year, it's going to be how the last 3 or 4 starts combined with both goalies feel going into it. And so whoever's trending upwards and kind of hot going into that spot is probably who's going to get the start. Like, that's really what it's going to come to, which is why, like, I can understand if there's paranoia to not want to miss a lot of time, or injury, or play through things, or whatever the case may be, when you're just trying to figure out, stay in the groove, and sharpen your toolbox before the playoffs begin. It's tough. Like, it looks like Matt Murray has kind of found his game. It's .943 save percentage tonight is his best since he's come back. And it's only gone up since then. It's following a .923 performance against the Ottawa Senators, where he had a lot of rubber flying at him, and was a main reason they won that game, because everything was tilted in Ottawa's favor in that contest. So, it's kind of hard to argue those two games right now. And then you look at the game Samsonov came off of, and it's tough. Like, I think overall, if you made the decision based on the overall season, I think you have to give it to Samsonov. But if you go based on who you're kind of most committed to, and who's been playing, like, the what have you done for me lately kind of thing, it's now Murray. But I mean, it's what have you done for me lately? They're going to have to see some of these other starts here in April and then make the decision. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, this does feel like it's really going to go down to the wire with both of these guys. And whoever's playing the best at that point is probably going to get the nod in game one against the Tampa Bay Lightning. And crazy to think that game is going to be just around the corner before we know it. Coming into this one tonight, I was really curious about the special teams, and more specifically the Maple Leafs power play going up against the Florida Panthers penalty kill. The Panthers, one of the most penalized teams in the league. They have a bottom 10 penalty kill, and go figure, on this night, it's the first time this year the Leafs get a 5-on-3. They are the last team in the NHL to get a 5-on-3 power play. Crazy that 6 teams have had 10 or more already this year, which seems kind of ridiculous, because we watch so many Maple Leafs games and we haven't seen a single one. And it's like, how could you get 10 this year? Like, that seems almost absurd that teams are, taking penalties against you when they're on the penalty kill. But the Maple Leafs get it for the first time this year, and go figure, they do capitalize with a 5-forward unit as Michael Bunting gets the goal. Let's hear from head coach Sheldon Keefe, who says it's about time that they got a 5-on-3.
Yeah, it's been a long wait. It's been a long wait for one, for sure. So we're glad to get it, and glad it doesn't go in the way you kind of draw it up. But it's nice for the guys to come through. It's an important time in the game.
Yeah, that was a huge goal to restore that 2-goal lead with the Michael Bunting goal, Dave. But what did you think of the 5-on-3 and deciding to go with 5 forwards? I know they've practiced it a lot. This has been a situation they've been preparing for. And as Sheldon Keefe said, maybe not the way you drew it up, because it was sort of a broken play, but still a goal, 5-on-3. The Leafs are 100% so far on the 5-on-3s this year.
Yeah, so the 5 forwards thing didn't surprise me, because at 5-on-3, that's kind of what they've always done. They just haven't had an opportunity to kind of utilize it. It's a different power play scheme and setup where they're not necessarily doing the 1-3-1. They're kind of umbrellaing it because of the fewer guys on the ice in that type of setup. I'm just glad this narrative is done, because a lot of times I was seeing, oh, they haven't had a 5-on-3 this season. And yeah, that's kind of, it is what it is. But like, look where they are. Look where they are in the standings. Stop focusing on the officiating. I think the more that was focused on the officiating is more of a distraction and less in terms of tightening up their game and just not putting themselves in bad spots. That's always been my mind of this, but I have a couple things to share on the 5-on-3, which is kind of funny. So where I'm seated, it's near the Toronto Maple Leafs box, but I didn't see it, but someone else who did see it said that when that was called, and I don't know if the broadcast caught it, but when they got the penalty to make it a 5-on-3, Kyle Dubas couldn't help but react almost as if they scored a goal, because it was definitely on the Leafs side as well. Like when that happened, they're like, what? Like they just kind of got me like, wait, you're kidding me. So it's not even just like fans. Like the Leafs are clearly aware. You can hear it. You can hear a sigh of relief from Sheldon Keefe's voice, and then when they did call it, the Leafs called the timeout. They did practice it in the last week. I remember one of the practices, they did spend a little bit of time on it, but not much. Spencer Carberry, who kind of mans the power play there, kind of had to talk things over and just get everyone ready systematically to kind of do what they were supposed to do. And even though it didn't go as they kind of drew it up, it worked. And even Austin kind of shared that it was more so that he was also a bit tired from the previous play. So just getting that rest to be set up to properly execute on that 5-on-3 was needed, and it certainly worked. So I'm glad this narrative's done, because if they didn't get a 5-on-3, I worry about how much bickering there would have been about that particular thing if they'd gone a whole season without a 5-on-3, and then we're looking at the officiating of the playoff games. So I'm glad that's a little not as much, that we're not going to talk about that anymore, because to me, it was just such a cop out for a lot of other things. Just be better than that. And just, don't worry about those little things. Yeah, the officiating sucks, but whatever. Like I think it's too much of a distraction, and you don't change the narrative by calling out the officiating that way. It's not like they're going to think about it the next time and be like, oh, well, now you're a 5-on-3. There's politicking with officials, but that's not the way it goes.
Well, interestingly, the officiating actually went the Maple Leafs' way at one point tonight, as Michael Bunting, who did score on that 5-on-3, was called for a high-sticking penalty, but the referees sent him to the box, and then they had a chat about it and said, wait a second, was that really him or not? And they came to the conclusion that it was a Panthers player that hit his own player, and they did let Bunting out of the box, and Bunting spoke about that moment post-game.
Yeah, you definitely had some emotions behind it, but it just happened so quick, so I can't really blame the ref on that. Things happen quick, and we just move on from that.
There's good appreciation, though, that they actually did conference it out and get it right in the end.
Yeah, for sure. Obviously, it was a close game at that time, and like I said, things happen fast, so can't put that on the ref or anything like that. Stuff happens like that, and I move on from it.
Yeah, Michael Bunting was pretty demonstrative, I would say, after that. But he had a good case, right? Because he's like, that wasn't me. That was not my stick. And in that moment, the ref has to make a snap decision, and that was the call that they went with. But as you said to him, I mean, it's good that now they can actually talk about it and reverse a call, whereas before it was like, okay, bad call goes your way. It's clearly not a penalty, and what can you do? That's just how it works.
Yeah, and I think that is big. I mean, at that point, there's guys that referees will watch out for. Like, that's just really what happens. And for a long time, Michael Bunting kind of went under the radar. He was drawing more penalties than he was taking. And then, he started getting some embellishment and being really animated, and sometimes showing up the officials. And sometimes the officials would shove him through a doorway, and like that one time in Toronto as well. So, it's been all over the place with Michael Bunting, but, he's tried to curb that. I wonder if it's one of those things where, being able to go to the net and not draw penalties is it can affect you. If you feel like you're going to get these calls by going to the net, you don't want to put your team at risk. And so I think by being able to kind of curb the emotions a little bit and have some sort of conversation, be like, hey, this wasn't me, please check it out or whatever. Even if he lost at that time, the fact that, they would look back and see it, they'll remember that for those next games. So, it's good that they actually did kind of talk it over. I was kind of surprised, just because usually there's not enough eyes on that to kind of see it. It was a weird angle too in real time. But they got it right. And, I kind of even joked even on Twitter when the Florida fans were yelling, "Rest, you suck," because they got a call right that they reversed. It just seemed very, funny in that moment. But look, Michael Bunting and the Toronto Maple Leafs and officiating, everything is politicking when it comes to officiating. There's a human element to it, unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on how you look at the game. It's not called by robots. And so you kind of have to play the game within the game a little. And so this was probably a good step for the Maple Leafs in terms of playing that game and maybe Bunting getting some of the benefit of things by showing that they were able to look at it and that they were like, yeah, my bad, I got it wrong.
Yeah, and for Michael Bunting, his game of late has, started to trend in the right direction, which is good to see. He's worked his way back into the top six after, playing some fourth line minutes just a few games ago. But another guy who has started to turn things around, specifically tonight, William Nylander, who set a career high with his 81st points of the season. That came on that Michael Bunting power play goal. And Nylander spoke after this one and talked about where things are at right now with his game.
Yeah, it's obviously a nice score. I thought my game's been getting better as of the past two games, so it's just moving in the right direction.
All right, very succinct, as usual, from William Nylander, straight to the point. It's like, yeah, it's better. Next question, let's move on with our lives. But, that's kind of what makes him so great, is that he is someone that, he did mention very recently that he wasn't happy with where his game was at, but he's pretty level-headed for the most part, and I'm sure he had confidence that it was going to turn around eventually. And tonight, I thought he was excellent. He was all over the ice, skating as he does. I know Sheldon Keefe recently talked about how he wanted to see more of Nylander holding on to that puck and playing that puck possession game. And I thought there was a lot of that tonight where he was just, swinging around the zone, taking it all over the place. And obviously was a big reason why the Maple Leafs pick up the win tonight.
Yeah, well, and it's just, again, it was going to the net, being able to pick up that puck and fire it off and really create that sustained pressure, I think was really good for him. And I thought he did have a pretty good game. One of the few that had a good game against the Islanders, despite not necessarily getting rewarded for it on the score sheet. But for him to kind of be able to do that and get back with John Tavares and distribute the puck and do the things that Tavares needs to be successful, I think that was the big part of it. That was what was the message when he wasn't there, which was stop being at the perimeter. Both Michael Bunting and John Tavares, they both like going to. So in some ways, this should be more of William Nylander's ability to kind of push the pace of play, free up for those guys, but also make sure that he's on the same page with both of his other guys on the line to make sure that he's being the William Nylander, the guy who's going to back check, the guy who's going to play the whole 200-foot game. And so he did that. He's kind of getting right back there. The fact that he gets the goal, I think, is going to fortify that he feels like he's back. And the number one thing that people should appreciate with Nylander is, even though he went through a little bit of a spell now, is it was short. It didn't require a benching. It was a very small shift down to the third line, which we gave him the benefit of the doubt. We didn't think at the time it was a demotion. We thought this was really Nylander going to try and drive a line here and do this spread out offense that, that they were looking at perhaps with Ryan O'Reilly. But he's earned a lot of the benefit of the doubt over his career now because of how well he's played this season, continuing to add to his career total in goals. And he's going to be another crucial piece for the Maple Leafs when they go into the playoffs, needing him to be as good as he's been, because he's been one of the better playoff performers for the Toronto Maple Leafs, despite what the team has done.
Yeah, absolutely. It's good to see William Nylander doing William Nylander things yet again. Coming up on Rink Wide Toronto, we'll talk about the blue line. We'll talk about another Maple Leaf as well that finally got off the schneid and picked up a goal in regulation. He did score in the shootout recently to win it, but this one counts for real on the back of the hockey card. That and more coming up here on Rink Wide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog. Free casino games and sports odds. It is time to play at bodog.net. Rob Wong and David Alter with you here on Rink Wide Toronto. Pre-game, post-game, every game. It is Rink Wide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, the place to play free casino games and get the latest sports odds. Rob Wong and David Alter, who joins us from Florida as the Maple Leafs beat the Panthers tonight 6-2. Time for the Bodog line of the day. And, not to be honest, I'm not sure how many people would have wagered on Alex Kerfoot to score a goal in this one, Dave. It's been 20-plus games since the Maple Leafs winger put one in the back of the net, but he gets one tonight. Did have a shootout winner recently to help them win a game, but of course that does not count as far as his season statistics go. But I thought it was well-deserved for Alex Kerfoot tonight. The guy was working his butt off. I mean, he's been working his butt off pretty much all season long and just hasn't been rewarded too often with goals as he picks up his, seventh of the year now tonight after that, eighth of the year tonight with that goal. But what have you made of his game? Because he's been all over the lineup in many different spots recently.
Yeah, I think he's doing the best with the hand he's kind of dealt with. He's kind of moving up and down and around. And when he is moving up, he's not moving up necessarily for good work or just being an offensive dynamo or pushing the pace of play or anything like that. I think it's just come to the point where he's just going to be relied upon for how strong he is defensively. That's really what it's all about right now. And every time I've talked to Alex Kerfoot to try to get a sense of where he is, he seems kind of down because, he really wants to he doesn't, while the team wins and everything is important, he wants to contribute. He really wants to kind of be able to kind of push it. And, he won't say it, but I mean, when you're the age he is and you're an unrestricted free agent, you're thinking about your future. Anyone who's in a contract year will never openly say, they're in a contract year, they got to push it. But you talk to them after their careers are done, they all admit, it's on their mind. They really have to push and kind of make bread for the next contract. And so the numbers aren't necessarily going to be to the point where maybe he gets what he got last time, and especially with the cap not projected to go up so much next year. But he can change that with a good playoff, and he can still be relied upon to play in big moments. And there's a reason why when the Leafs have had opportunities to scratch guys and guys go in and out, Kerfoot is not one of them because he is trusted by Sheldon Keefe for his defensive abilities. And so for him to get the goal, it's good. To be consistent is his number one asset. And to be as good as he is defensively, I think is why it's really important for the Leafs to be deep and for someone like him to kind of be able to jump up and down should injuries happen, because let's be real, as good as it would be to have everyone fully healthy in time for the playoffs, it may not be realistic. Things can happen. Things can happen during the playoffs. And Alex Kerfoot's going to be relied upon just as much as any of the other forwards.
Yeah, he's going to play a big role for sure in many different situations. And as he said, I mean, he's playing for a contract next year. He's unfortunately not putting up contract year type of numbers that we see from time to time from numerous players around the NHL. But still, if he can have a solid playoffs, then he's definitely going to make people notice coming into this off season. Let's talk about the blue line tonight. The Maple Leafs going back with 7 defensemen. It was Morgan Rielly getting the night off this evening. So Eric Gustafsson popping on to power play 1, which was expected, of course. Wasn't a huge sample size to really get a gauge of how he fared up there, but it's pretty close that he is someone that can play that role pretty adequately. But, the one thing I wanted to bring up, and it's only because it happened earlier this season too, when Morgan Rielly went down, and here was another game where the Leafs go up against a high-octane offense, and the defensive numbers for the team look pretty good. I mean, they outshot Florida tonight as far as shot attempts go, not on the shot clock, but shot attempts. That's pretty difficult to do against the Panthers, who are like the best team in the league at generating shots on goal and shot attempts. Are you reading anything into this performance tonight without Morgan Rielly? I'm not saying that he deserves to be out of the lineup completely. Like, I think, of course, you'd rather have Morgan Rielly than Eric Gustafsson. But, it's hard to, see something like this and not kind of think back to earlier this year when the Leafs were an incredibly strong defensive team when Morgan Rielly was out with that injury.
Yeah, this is a tough one because I think it did surprise me before the game when Sheldon Keefe said that Morgan Rielly was going to dress, because I even debated this with colleagues when Mark Giordano rested, and that they had this conversation a couple of weeks back about this being a plan where they're going to rotate guys. Rielly and maybe Brody were two that I thought were kind of untouchable in that regard, in terms of, well, they're going to get the reps and they're really going to call the shots, but everyone else is going to kind of have to rotate him. And the Giordano one surprised me to some extent, just because, he's been in every game. He was elevated to higher roles when guys like Rielly and Brody were out earlier in the year. The guy likes to, quote unquote, keep the motor going, right? Doesn't want to take a day off, but, there is something to be said about the fact that there's so many games, such a short period of time. Sheldon mentioned it was 5 games in 9 nights for Morgan Rielly, but it was also 5 games in 9 nights for Jake McCabe. And McCabe seems to be the only one, albeit he is new, that has not taken a day off yet. I'm sure it will come. But going back to your original question, as I long-windedly answer, Morgan Rielly not playing in this game here, it doesn't necessarily make me feel like he shouldn't be in the top 6 for the playoffs. I know there's a lot of Morgan Rielly haters out there, but I think some of this is team done. And I've talked about this on the podcast many times. Like, I didn't like the fact that he had 5 different defense partners in a short period of time immediately after coming. Like, I just felt like we know what his ideal defensive partner is. Yeah, you like to mix and move around guys, but the more moving around there was, the worse it seems to be for Morgan Rielly, for better or worse. And yeah, you could say if he's your number 1 defenseman, he should be able to handle that. But I just don't see it anywhere else where a number 1 defenseman is being passed around this much with the game to game to game. Once they found a proper chemistry, and that chemistry, it was with TJ Brody. So, yeah, I mean, it's good. Like, if something happens to Morgan Rielly, it's good you have this framework from earlier in the season, and then now tonight that you don't necessarily have to panic. But I still think that the team is better with him than without him, provided they put him in that proper spot with TJ Brody, because everywhere else it's been a bit of a mess.
Yeah, I mean, it's just one game, so you don't want to read too much into it. Like I said, I just brought it up because we saw a larger sample earlier this year when they were without Morgan Rielly, and things were going pretty well defensively. But he's been good too, right? It's not as if Morgan Rielly has been bad. I thought his game has been improving over the last couple of weeks. He still has moments here or there, but who doesn't on this Maple Leafs team? I mean, Timothy Liljegren's had a great season, but now he's had a really rough stretch, and tonight was pretty bad again for Liljegren. But yeah, we'll see what happens here with Morgan Rielly. As you said, just find him a consistent partner, whether that's TJ Brody. Just staple him next to somebody and just run with that instead of putting him on this carousel where it's one night it's Luke Shen, the next night it's TJ Brody, the next night it's whoever. Like, just figure something out. This guy is your highest paid defenseman. He needs to play and play well. You need him come playoff time. So, try to figure it out to get him in a good spot and take advantage of his skills. Meanwhile, I wanted to ask you about this because it was hard to not think about this at the beginning of the game once it got going, but the anthem tonight. Oh my God. whoever this guy was, I almost feel like he put in like a fake resume, and it was just like he applied, and they were like, "Oh, where have you done anthems before?" And he's like, "Oh, I've done them at all these different places that they can't fact check or call about, in these independent, arenas for sporting events." And he just wanted to go out there and do it. He has like a burgeoning music career that he wants to get started. It's one thing to butcher the Canadian anthem. Like, we've seen that over and over and over again from American anthem singers. But it's one thing to really struggle with your own anthem as well. Like, I don't think I can remember someone struggling so poorly with both anthems before a sporting event. Like, that's tough to do. That's in an elite tier that this guy put himself in.
Yeah, that was funny. I actually had colleagues be like, "Get that guy's name. Did you get the name?" I'm like, Well, I think I didn't get his name. But that was, it's funny because I believe TSN, when they have the games, they don't show the anthems anymore. It's only the Sportsnet games, right? And the US broadcasts don't really show the anthems because they just like to go straight to it. So, this was interesting. And then the US one, it just seemed like he was just doing what I've seen aspiring singers do with the American anthem, which is make it their own thing. And sometimes too much, right? Like it kind of had a Bleeding Gums Murphy start to it where I'm like, oh my God, this is going to take forever. And then it just went like Whitney Houston in terms of the octave range, like up and down, not in terms of quality. I should say, but yeah, it was that Canadian anthem that was just like, it gave me vibes of the CFL expansion into the United States in the mid 90s when the guy was singing "Oh Canada" like it was "Oh Christmas Tree." So,
now that's that's impressive. Yeah, like that's an all timer. Yeah. Like, it's almost so bad that it's good. Like, this was so bad that it's just bad. Yeah, like that's how horrendous it was. I looked it up. His name is Ryan James.
Ryan James. So, where'd you find him? Because
I just searched it on Twitter, like anthem singer and the game tonight, and yeah, people saying Ryan James. Someone saying, did he win a contest? Is kind of how I felt about it.
Is it spelled the way like it would be, or there's no?
Yes.
Okay, all right, just making sure.
Yeah, poor Ryan James becomes a meme. I imagine we'll be seeing that maybe on some sort of like worst of highlight shows down the road. But I just. You have one job, right? Like, your job is to sing the national anthem, and to like not even like have a clue of how the Canadian anthem is supposed to go. Like, I just don't understand.
Well, they had this.
Just ask someone. Ask someone or listen to it. Like, it can't be that difficult. It's a 90-second song. It's not like you have to spend your entire day, trying to listen to this thing. Like, it's pretty straightforward. I just don't understand like how someone could do that at a National Hockey League game. Like, you want to do it in, some independent league or wherever. That's one thing, but that's not pro.
Did they say
that
anything
is not
about
a pro
it on
anthem.
The broadcast?
I think Chris Cuthbert made a comment about how at least the Canadian fans sounded pretty good because they were trying to carry this guy through the anthem.
They did. I actually made a TikTok of the anthem performance once it got off to a start. I didn't get the beginning of it, but once it got off to a start, I immediately pushed record because I knew I was witnessing a moment. So it was one of those things where I was just kind of like, okay, I should take a look here. And yeah, it was certainly something for sure. But, that's why you come to the road, to witness the spectacle of hockey and what you might see away from it as well.
All right. Well, there's another reason why you go on the road, and that, of course, is to eat the media meal. You set it up on a tee perfectly for me to wrap up this edition of Rink Wide Toronto. So the Florida Panthers media meal. Like, what is even the food of Florida or that area? Like, the first thing I think of for whatever reason is gator. Oh, yeah, maybe. But I was going to say gator, which might be a little too stereotypical.
I did see some.
I don't know how. What's that, sir?
I did see the iguanas on my way here, which was pretty crazy. I don't typically see that. They were like iguanas or lizards. I took a video of it near my hotel, and I went to the hotel. I'm like, is that normal seeing around here? They're like, yeah, but they're not harmful. They only eat flowers and plants. Like, they won't bother you, but they might join you in the pool. I'm like, well, that's a little nonsense.
Oh,
like, I don't know if I want to. I don't know if I want to be like swimming with an iguana. Like, even if it is harmless, it would still freak me out because if you're not a local, it's definitely not something you expect I mean, it's better than a gator for sure.
But yeah, that is a little terrifying. But yeah, the medium meal tonight. I imagine there was no gator on the menu.
So okay, so for the third straight night, I don't know what it is. This whole trip has been tortellini. Like there's a lot of tortellini on this trip, and so there was tortellini, some good meat sauce, and then I kind of went all over the board with it because they had this tortilla soup, which was pretty good, but they had these tamales. And the tamales, maybe I've never eaten a tamale before. I don't even know. It was a pork tamale, but it was wrapped up. It was wrapped up in this sheet that was the same consistency of a corn husk. And I'm like, okay, do I just bite into it? Is that what they're using? Like it's like in place of like dough? And I bite into it. I'm like, okay, this is clearly not meant to be because it's like a sheet of paper, essentially. And then like I'm unwrapping it, and it's so many layers to the point where I'm like, okay, I just give up. Like I'll send you a photo because it was just all over the place. So like it looked good, but I couldn't handle it. It was the first time. Like I tried to ask along, like, what am I supposed to do with this? I asked Ryan Dixon, who's Sportsnet, who had the same thing, who's on this trip. I'm like, how did you eat this thing? He's like, I don't know. I tried. I gave up. Like I tried to get to the middle of it, but then like by the time you unfolded everything, it was bigger than the plate itself, that it just wasn't worth making the mess. So, it was okay. Cherry Coke is one of the soda options, which, nice. I'm a big Cherry Coke fan. So there was that. And, I mean, cookies for dessert, no ice cream like we saw on the islands, but, yeah, it was okay. B-, okay. C+.
Not bad.
It was okay. $12 US. But cashless, that's important to me. But yeah, other than that, it was okay. The salad was okay. Oh, they had some tacos as well. So I had some beef with sour cream and cheese. Kind of felt like more authentic Chipotle in that regard.
All right, so B- for the Florida Panthers this year. So not bad.
Not great either.
Unfortunately, not great.
Like a borderline C+, B-. Like,
right, just gets the job done. Fills up the belly for a couple of hours, and then you're going to go find somewhere else.
Although they did, so I had to, when I went up for seconds, I had to wait in line again. They didn't adopt the Larry David, you don't wait in line for seconds rule, which I was a little. But then someone else did it, and I was like, okay, well, is it allowed or not allowed? Or maybe I should have just taken the liberty and not succumbed to public pressure. So there was that element.
No, you should have just gone for the chat and cut. I think that would have been the easiest way to work your way in there. Just oh hey, how's it going? And then just start scooping away.
Same episode. That was the same.
I don't know if it was the same episode.
Yeah, it may not have been.
There's just too many of those types of things that are perfect.
The chat and cut is a perfectly executed strategy. But the best, remember, is she still did it, even when arguing with him. He's like, I respect your game. I'm not even going to argue with you on this.
Oh boy. Yeah, on that note, maybe I do need to go catch up on some Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Medium meal musings.
That's always a great way to end things up. Medium meal musings yet again. Hard to believe we're almost at the end of the year. I guess we won't be doing them for every single Tampa Bay Lightning game. That might be a little bit repetitive. You're going to do it? All right. So we'll keep it going.
You know why? Because I remember specifically for game, because like last year, and the schedule works out the same, where I'm going to be in Florida like 3 times in the span of like 5 weeks, maybe more times, because of the Florida games ending the season similar to starting the playoffs. And so the media meal for that game 3 was spectacular. And it was way different than what I experienced in the regular season. And I asked someone, I was like, did they step it up? And they're like, oh yeah, we stepped it up for the playoffs. I'm like, all right.
Well, they have to.
Not
they
always.
have to, because it's the cup. It's the cup. That's why they do it.
Because it's the cup, but like the finals I get, like the league steps in, right? But this was not. Yeah. This was just first round. And for that, it's like it's treated usually the same as the regular season for the most part, but they stepped it up for game. So media meal musings will continue. It is not going to be a thing that dies.
All right. You heard it here first. Playoff edition of Media Meal Musings is coming your way here on Rink Wide Toronto. But that'll do it for this edition of the post-game show. We'll be back on Saturday when the Maple Leafs head off to Raleigh to take on the Carolina Hurricanes. As always, you can like, review, subscribe to the pod wherever you get your favorite pods. You can follow us on Twitter, RinkWideTOR, at DeAlter, at RobWong34, and get the pod at RinkWideToronto.com. For David Alter and producer Aaron, I'm Rob Wong. You've been listening to Rinkwide Toronto, sponsored by Bodog, Canada's home for casino games and sports odds, where everyone goes to play. It's Rinkwide Toronto, pregame, postgame, every game.